It's a very good afternoon, good morning, whatever time you are watching this or listening to this podcast. Thank you very much for choosing to download it, to watch it. Today, I'm honored to have an honorable member of radio, my honorable member of the media, my friend, my colleague, my former colleague, my brother, Dumela Tlhabut.
Kada,
Kada. Shapuzit. Yo, I'm so honored to have you, brother.
I'm honored to be sitting here with you. I'm honored to be more Mr. President as well.
Yeah. Mr. President.
The honorable one.
you've been seeing him on social media.
Yeah, and quite interesting that I actually come to sit here after Jessica Mbangeni, Don Dada.
Yeah.
Some of the well-known people. So, yeah. But I'm looking forward to it.
I know. Bo Tabang so. Ndana go Lesotho nda.
Mr. Baby Powder.
Bo Mr. Baby Powder. No, thank you very much for coming, my brother.
Thank you so much for inviting me, my brother.
Let's introduce you to everyone. Kalibito Mosimaneotsile Seetelo.
Yes, sir.
O tsaletswe go Taung.
Ke tsaletswe go plekeng mo ba re ke Manchester. So Taung ke like a municipality, an area.
Oh.
We have different villages.
Okay.
Over 23 villages actually. It's under Taung.
23?
Over like that. Because now they are continuously growing. You get more and more.
Yeah.
So like it's a more area in Manchester, not far from the actual town of Taung.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, so I was born there. And
small village.
It is not quite small in a way.
Yeah.
Compared to other villages.
Oh.
Yeah. So like there are other smaller villages around Taung or around Manchester itself.
Yeah.
But the number is one thing. I will actually say lady because she's also from Taung.
Yeah.
So it is quite smaller compared to Manchester.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was born in Manchester. Thomas Gera Manchester up until grade 5, and then I can move to grade 6. Yeah, straight down. That's when I moved down to Kudito.
Yeah.
I was a grade 6 to my mother's side of the family. So I actually ended up attending the primary school at 2. I started off in Manchester, primary school, and then I when I moved now here grade 6, that's when I moved to Kudito, one of the villages also with and I did my grade 6 primary school, go Bahamaidi primary school, Kudito.
Oh.
Yeah.
And what was it like, going from one primary to another, making new friends, new environment? No travel, or were you staying in that new village?
I actually stayed there.
Oh.
It was quite interesting because I used to go to village here more lady school holidays.
Yeah.
Now and then. And then obviously, when I was still small, a little thing, but not for long. Yeah. And so it was quite interesting. And so it wasn't so difficult per se.
And then right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so difficult because I actually knew some of the people before I came to go and attend school there.
Yeah.
Quite interesting because I ended up actually staying with my full time with my grandmother. My maternal grandmother.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting. I won't actually complain about my schooling years.
Yeah.
And,
And then grandmother, was she strict or was she like nice? Because what grandmother, they can be like that.
You know how grandmothers are. So
Thingy.
Yeah,
Oh, on the right. Okay.
So
yeah.
So my grandmother was actually she was quite cool. She was quite nice. But the fortunate part, guy, is that she actually taught me a lot because here's the thing. She was wheelchair bound by the time I came to start my grade 6 year.
Oh.
She was wheelchair bound. So obviously, even before she was wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
So when I moved there to stay with her full time now, I knew how to do things on my own, many things on my own. I wasn't dependent on anyone per se.
Oh.
Because I moved there with my older sister, but then later on, I ended up actually staying alone. So it was really buyer, like obviously making sure that
you cook, clean,
and then also school uniform was also ready on time. Was class, and also you get to iron your clothes. It was something that you had to do on your own.
Yeah.
So I will say, in a way, it taught me a lot of responsibility. It taught me to be independent
at a very young age.
At a very young age, yeah, because lady later man bale Mojubek wa itse Mosibagolo ba sibana Mojubek.
Yeah.
They will only come maybe once a month or maybe twice a month if ba phone. But most of the time ne bale Mojubek ba sibana.
Oh. Okay, so now what made you like, when did the dream of coming to Joburg to come and stay near your parents come?
It was not a dream per se.
Yeah.
Because I is off at school, then like it is something it is a given. Off at school, you need to move. Once you go village, you are looking forward to the day I'll move out to Luena and actually go and stay with your parents, or I suppose to go and study further. So I moved here 2007, the very same year I first matric. So if it is so cool, and then that very same year I first so cool, November, then I said no, okay, Joburg, and that's when I moved to Joburg. Then obviously the following year, that's when I started now my journey now.
Yeah.
I was study here.
Yeah.
Which was actually quite interesting because you need to study for something it will be easy for you to become employable.
Yes.
And then I was on radio, but no. Like a radio, telling them about journalism, but no, what is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was quite interesting, but I'm actually grateful for Bang Sapotile with the letter that they were getting. Bang Alawilo Hore to follow with the dream that was radio, because I always wanted to do this. I remember actually back in 2007, in the relay metric year. So then we had to go to Taung, the town itself, really apply the ID. Because obviously a metric year you need to have your ID. So it was around the month of June, the month of July, and it was actually the very first time Kibwana Moto Alumu Studio hosting a radio show in studio, and that was in 2007, my metric year. But I always loved radio because I suppose there was no any other way. We had to love radio.
Because there was not TV necessarily.
TV in the next door. So
yeah. Okay. No, half a 5 rand, that's a good watch.
No, 5 rand was actually too much.
Back
in the days, only 50 cents, it was actually too much, or a lot for you to be able to pay.
But no, I'm go window and just look over, or no,
no, fortunately, but then they should like a carpet, because back then it was only later on that
black and white.
Black and white.
Yeah.
And TV molo, you paid obviously your 50 cents.
Yeah.
And then a few minutes, so it's your favorite movie, Mobob TV or whichever channel. Unfortunately, battery fell.
Yo.
But so and as I'm telling you, like radio,
I'm not refund,
yeah. So we had to love radio. We will actually listen to radio before Yaskela, but also coming back from school, you'll be looking forward to that radio show in the afternoon, and also before you go to sleep at night, you'll be looking forward to that radio show. So radio has always been a way of life for Rona, because there was no any other way of entertainment besides radio.
But now, who were you listening to at the time?
I grew up listening to Mosimaneotsile FM, and also our community radio station, Kutaung Valta FM, which actually happens to be the first radio station Kibona a radio presenter to Resume Studio. So they allowed us to go in there, but obviously you had to sit on the other side.
Yeah.
And it was actually the guy by the name of Mosimaneotsile Seetelo, may his soul rest in peace. And funny enough, like later on, he was the very same guy who allowed me to step into the studio for the very first time ever.
What?
And take a study. So I obviously studied, and then I had to do my practicals.
Yeah.
When I went to back to the radio station, Valta FM, he was the guy when the programs manager, and he allowed me into the studio. And I mean, each and every time when I think about my radio journey, I reflect on how I actually got to meet this guy, and then get to sit accuracy more facing, rediscuss how am I going to be obviously allowed into the studio to learn from other presenters. And so I grew up listening to Mosimaneotsile FM, Valta FM, also a community radio station. But yeah, there was also another radio station, OEFM, which was strictly Africans, one will say.
Okay.
I grew up listening to that radio station. Northwest, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think it area at Lexdorp. I grew up listening to that radio station, and I'm telling you, like, for the music, but also for the conversations, and we just loved it. Yeah, and we just loved listening to those radio stations, Valta FM, Mosimaneotsile FM, and then obviously OEFM, as I mentioned as well.
Yeah. Who exactly inspired you go radio? Like any of the presenters?
Yeah. So growing up, obviously listening to the likes of Bo Douglas Mosadi, Bo Benny Motaung, and many others from Mosaic FM. You know, I already said Mosaic FM. You'll obviously have the voices of Trebo Manyapelo, the late Trebo Manyapelo,
Yes.
and many others. So I won't say one in particular for Mosaic FM, but I will say many of them Mosaic FM. Listening to different programs. With the late Modiko Mutubi and many others, Mosaic FM. Like, just listening to radio, Bomukubi Molebati, who's still on radio even now, Mosaic FM. Just listening to them, listening to their style of presenting, and you actually, it was quite cool just listening to what they had to offer there, and I just loved it. Yeah.
All right, we've got a guy joining us on the outside over there. He's over there. He's just here to say hello. And
he's just enjoying Mr. President.
He's admiring the car, so no. Away. All right, so now we're gonna take a quick break in the next 5 to 10 minutes so that Rilo told us something else. So what did you decide to study? So where did you go and study?
Yeah. So I decided to study journalism. In the journalism, I've always been fascinated by the journalists telling stories here. So I decided to study journalism and media studies via Valtech. And that is what I studied back then. But just recently, also in my radio production, the National Electronic Media Institute of South Africa, that is NEMISA. So that's what I studied. And but obviously, I'm looking forward to studying more. I'm looking forward to just adding more to what I already know, radio, because you can never say you know more.
Yeah, no, for sure, definitely.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you say, since you're a radio personality, would you say podcast and radio are the left shoe and the right shoe?
No, I will definitely say I will not compare them to the left and the right shoe. I will compare them to, it is one and the same thing. Like back in the days, we never imagined doing radio the way we are doing radio now.
Yeah.
So radio has evolved over the years. Back in the days, right, you know, radio just PM9 battery.
Yeah.
Also, radio in your car maybe, but then later on things changed.
Yes, medium wave.
Absolutely. Yeah. So things have changed. And when it comes to podcast is radio. Just that we are doing it differently. So we are doing it in a more modern way. And there's always been a debate here, no, podcast is going to replace radio. There's no way, because according to me at least, it is one and the same thing. So just that it has evolved to from what it used to be to what it is now today.
Absolutely. No, definitely. And then okay, let's start your journey le Kofifi FM, and then you're also assisting another radio station in Northwest. How did your journey go, Kofifi FM? How did you end up more? We're in the middle of Westbury now.
Yes.
Back in the day, you could never chill in Westbury like this. Especially with a car like this, they could have taken it from us, but here we are
in the middle of Westbury.
In the middle of Westbury. How did you end up more Westbury?
So how did I end up here? My lady Letema, they started working go Baleko Hamburg, and then they moved to this side. And my mother used to work for actually this family down in Claremont, which is not far from here. So they stayed in Westbury. And obviously when I moved to Johannesburg after my matric year, the only place I can move Mohona was obviously to come and stay with my parents. And that's how I actually got to know Westbury. How I got to know about Kofifi FM, remember I had already studied 2008, but getting into radio was quite something difficult. We know almost only the gatekeepers, the doorkeepers more especially at the community radio level. So how I got to know about Kofifi FM, I was actually working for another company, really busy more community. This is how I got to be introduced to the Westbury community itself. Within the communities, replace the old bulbs, what you want to say is silver, and then replacing them with the energy saving bulbs.
Or the street lights?
No. Actually,
okay.
So already replace the energy saving bulbs. So I will go into this flat for the very first time ever. And then also having been told how Westbury is a very dangerous place.
This was like a gang.
I'm telling you, yeah. And I remember I was not used to the area per se as well. And having to go into these places, I'm actually representing this company, this Eskom. We are here to replace your energy saving bulbs. And so it was it's something difficult, something different. But funny enough, I got into these homes, and then I got the warmest welcome actually from the community member.
Oh, wow.
They would invite me to have a cup of tea with them.
What?
And then where are you from? I'm from Taung. And I actually met a guy in Plela. No, I'm actually also from an area not far from Taung. And how I got to change my surname and actually be classified as colored was because of the apartheid era. And I needed to, with my family, I needed to also obviously to make sure that get welcoming to these communities and also get to be hired easier. So if I classified as colored, it was more better compared to being classified as a black person. And so they welcomed me into their homes, Bamfadi Day, and then I'll have breakfast.
Wow.
And later on, a few weeks down the line, I was actually promoted in that particular Spanish.
Yeah.
And then I got to be a supervisor also. So I got used to these communities with Newclaire, Bosmont, and other areas by working for that company. That was before working for Kofifi FM. And then how I got to know about Kofifi FM, I was working for another center in Westbury, based at the Family Worship Center.
Okay.
As a social media trainer there. And I saw in
the Westbury Community Center.
So
before it changed?
Before I moved to the Westbury Youth Center,
okay.
I was waiting for another one known as RLabs down in Westbury, Leone Barike. It is part of the Family Worship Center. It is a church, but within the church, there's an organization there, Barike RLabs. So they are also training, similar to the Westbury Youth Center, they're also training young people, or at least back then they were training young people, life skills and stuff, including also social media. So I was working for them, and I got to see this local newspaper article. There's a radio station that is going to open up. That was in 2011 now. But by 2012, this radio station is going to open up. You know what? This is something I've always wanted to do. Yeah. And so I obviously approached them. First of all, I said, this is where you find them. Go Westbury Secondary School. I went there obviously a couple of times. So I wasn't welcomed. I wasn't actually accepted immediately. But no, you can join us. No, we haven't started yet, but come and check us after 2 weeks. I will come after 2 weeks to come check on them.
Yeah.
And so that is basically how my journey began. And then later when I started now volunteering with station, and that was in 2012. They opened up their doors or officially went on air in 2012.
They were at the hospital?
At Coronation Hospital, yes.
Oh, yes, okay.
So that's when I joined them as a volunteer. But I wasn't on air per se. I was working as, not different from what I was doing before when I was working for that company, going from door to door. So I started working for the station now as a volunteer, as a reporter. So I will literally go out into the communities, gather stories. Again, this other tape recorder, an old one. So I will go out there, get record about you, and that is how you and I actually got to.
I remember that tape of yours.
Yes, yeah. That one is for kids, yeah. So that's how I actually got to be introduced to the world of radio.
Yeah.
As a professional, obviously, because I knew radio back then. I did the practicals in the Northwest Province. But working on Kofifi FM, that's how I started at 2012, and then it moved to the stage whereby I ended up now moving into becoming an actual co-host when I was working with you on the talk show.
Yeah, I remember the daily wrap-up.
Yes.
And we had all sorts of different guests.
I'm telling you, something that one was actually not maybe expecting to see anytime soon, because growing up in the Northwest, and then 1 minute you have now Nomvula Mokonyane, the premier, then coming to Westbury.
Just.
And I'm still fresh in the industry. The premier is coming to Westbury.
Yeah.
And you need to interview her. So where do I begin? Because I don't even have experience as a journalist. Never mind you, I haven't actually done interviews of that caliber. So I had to go out there, get interview at the premier. So that happens to be actually one of the biggest interviews when I started at a community radio level, or when I started on Kofifi FM. And then later on, obviously, I got to alongside you interview the likes of Mosimaneotsile and a couple of others. So it was actually a start of good things, because later on, it was easier for me to just approach minister, to approach the premier, the MEC, and say, okay, can now Mosimaneotsile Seetelo from Kofifi FM, and obviously planning to have an interview with them.
Sure, my man, your journey has been absolutely amazing. And what do you think are the struggles that you went through, ka radio?
Yeah, the struggles more radio, and I would actually think we are for a couple of, if not many, if not all of them actually, by the whole Bamo community radio sector. It has always been that the lack of resources and having to go out and get stories and be criticized at that. Remember, Harina the resource, and you need to be out there. How the community radio, you must report on our issues. The resource. So as I mentioned, I used to work before Kinalukului. I used to work to these different areas. So we are Kofifi FM. Yes, we are based in Westbury, but we are broadcasting for the area the area Soweto. So when people listen to Kofifi FM out in Riverlea, they want to hear their stories. So how do you get there? So it has always been that something that is still there, by the way, in other community radio stations, and I'm still experiencing that also. The lack of resources, but also just people criticizing and not knowing that Wanamo community radio sector, we are actually volunteers. And I will say that if you work for a community radio station for life, then you are a volunteer for life. We are not different from any other community activist. We just happen to be behind the microphone. We just happen to have a voice. But I'm not different from someone a community activist or to some community to make sure that young people are actually move away from the substance abuse. So we are also not different. It's just that when the only issue, the only privilege and alone get the microphone because we are able to reach more people, and that is something that we should never actually take for granted. Because when they want this platform, they need this platform, but as we can actually get into radio.
Absolutely, and I think I like what you're saying. You're a community activist or berekelang an NGO.
Absolutely,
and you are servicing the community by your field share information.
Yes.
And make sure that people are informed, educated, and they are kept abreast of the issues that are happening in their communities.
Yeah.
Why is funding so difficult for community media? Because you've got an airwave, you've got a frequency, you've got a listenership base, you've got an area base that you cover. But then how is it possible that community radio stations struggle to raise new?
Something, it is a struggle, I'm telling you. And why is it difficult? And then we also need to change how we run these community radio stations. If we want to make money, we need to change the manner in which we run them. If we want people to come and invest, people to come and advertise with the radio station, we need to change the manner in which we run radio stations, community radio stations. There's so many community radio stations already in South Africa, but how many of them have unfortunately had to shut down their doors because they were not run properly?
And
because people in the Bali greedy, they forgot along the way. We actually started this as community activists. We started this because we wanted to be the voice for the community. I mean, if Kofifi was not here, how many ministers, premiers will actually come to Westbury? But we actually give this community a voice. And I believe other community radio stations are doing the same. They give those communities a voice to say, no, this is what is happening here, Minister. Then it will be easier for Minister Fikile Mbaludo to come down here and see how people struggle at transport. It will be easier for Minister Bekikele to come down here and see how people struggle against terrorism and substance abuse in the community. But so we give people a voice, but we need to change the manner in which we run these organizations in order for them to start making money. Otherwise, we'll be here for years and we'll still be talking about the issue of lack of funding or no funding at all years from now, because who wants to put money where they don't actually see value?
And so the issue is management and management. No, good leaders, management, but also us as community members, we need to be appreciative. And business people, we need to be appreciative of this community or this media sector, so community radio sector, because we don't mind paying radio station number 1 that happens to be a commercial radio station and radio station number 2 that happens to be a public broadcaster. But can I have a problem to pay a community radio station? Because after all, you're a community radio station, so why should I pay you? And then you forget
in this community radio station, ho na le batho ba tshwana le bo Mosimaneotsile Seetelo, ho na le batho ba tshwana le bo many others ba le gore ba bereka mo this radio station to make sure that lights are actually kept on, place ya cleaniwa and stuff like that. So I want to say business people, they need to think about that, change their mentality towards community radio stations. Politicians must also change their mentality, because unfortunately, right, most of them when it leads up to the elections. And then after the elections, we actually just become a memory for one until once again we get to the next elections when that no, there's actually a community radio station, because they cannot actually deny the fact that we are closer to the people, we are closer to these communities. So yeah, not only must actually our leaders change, I'm talking about leadership in the community radio sector, but also we need to also change our attitude towards community radio, because we need money to run community radio.
You know, there's a community radio station called Hot 91.9.
Yes, yeah.
Now, Hot 91, they took over a radio license of the old Horizon Stereo.
Yes.
And they commercialized a community radio station into a commercial community radio station. Now they started getting people like Bo Jeremy Mansfield, the old 5 FM boys, the old 94.7, Bo Sasha Martiningo, and there's a couple of them. And now it's a commercial radio station. So they compete with the likes of 947, 702, SAFM in terms of revenue.
Yes.
And I remember meeting and chatting to those guys. And you're quite right. The issue is management. Your station manager has to have a vision. Your program management needs to have a vision. Everybody must be accountable. Everybody must be able to deliver on their work, so that the station is a machinery that actually works and it's able to generate revenue. And then they started getting your local dealerships, your local doctor, your local farmers, so you know, within an area of coverage. So, and I always wondered, community radio stations, especially the black-run radio stations, how is it that they are not able to attract sponsorship? But I think, as you say, key issue management.
Yeah, and we are obviously a community radio station is not from the onset. We are not in the business of making money.
Yeah.
That is not what we are there for. But obviously, without money, how are we then going to be able to do what we are supposed to do, to go out and make sure that the communities are well informed, they are well represented. By representation, I mean having to go out there, honestly, the state of the city address, the state of the province address. We need to be to be out there,
and you must be branded, and
we need to be. Yeah.
It's all those little things that make a huge difference.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So beside management, as I mentioned earlier on, yes, management must be on point, but also the one is about to those who listen to to this community radio stations. Let us not only wait for the annual general meeting and come and complain, right? Because then you are not really encouraging, but they have always been there volunteering with the community radio station and say, because it is okay for you to criticize, but I always say that criticize me in a way that you are going to help me grow. But the sky criticize and also forget the good that these community radio stations are actually doing in a community. So maybe you had to take away that community radio station today, then what? What is going to happen to the very same community? So yeah, beside management, to let us appreciate what we have, because in other communities, radio stations already were there before. Unfortunately, so are thing, and people are suffering a lot compared to when those community radio stations were existing.
And I think what I love about community radio, it's the fact that there's so many young people who have been developed through community radio. They've made their ways to all other commercial, regional, and so on radio stations. Yeah. My guy, let's take a break. I think I've had a great conversation with you as part one. Ari Lobatla Kota or like some chip roll. I don't know. I feel like something greasy today. I don't know. Something mafuranya and chipsy, Russian special or something. And then we'll come back. And I think on our next talk, let's explore further the issue. Politics. You've reported a lot on politics. Let's talk about Joburg politics, your experience. Yadi politics Joburg in the next segment. So thank you very much for watching this part one. We're going to take a break. Thank you so much for listening, for watching. please download. Please make sure that you subscribe to this channel, Free Ride Podcast. We are moving. We're going to bring you all these great people to come and share knowledge. Lilo na iso. All about Fueto. Welcome back, man. This is part 2 of our conversation with my brother Mosimaneotsile. We've just had something to eat. What do you call what we just ate? Ki sandwich or ki good?
If we're in Pretoria right now, the guys would actually comment and say,
No.
But he said the school boy, the school girl, so I get into the
No.
but yeah, give me Mamzito's
From Mamzito's Mo Westbury. So if you're ever around Mo Westbury and you want something greasy and oily and nice and chilled, if you want to sleep, in fact, so Mo Mamzito's. Bye, Mamzito.
I was actually saying the same thing last time. I had a 3-hour show to do.
Yeah.
And then before show, Kareka, one of those, this actually suicidal because how do you buy something like this way before show? So then I said I need luck after eating this before show.
Yeah. All right, my brother. So we've had something to eat. Now we're about to wrap up our last section of our conversations. I think what I wanted to touch on, how you've managed to get into radio but focus on talk radio, and particularly the issues, the community issues, including government issues, including politics. Community issues. I mean, this is one of the most difficult communities to work in. Now, the issues deeper within, just maybe list 1 or 2 or 3 of them that are the biggest issues that you've covered about this community of Westbury, Newclaire and Riverlea.
Yeah. I mean, as we know, the community of Westbury, Newclaire and other communities surrounding this area of Westbury, the issue against gangsterism back in the days has always been an issue. Young people, unfortunately, so even today, Sipo, they are still into that, in a sense, this mentality that gangsterism is cool. But if you speak to about they are former gangsters, but you know what, it was difficult back in the days, and wanted to follow in the very same footsteps. So unfortunately, even today, the issue of gangsterism sets the issue of substance abuse. I mean, just a few days ago, last week on Friday to be specific, at one of the schools, one school learner actually jumped out of the schoolyard, and just outside of the schoolyard, about twins. So how he actually had a gun or where he got a gun while inside the school premises, the problem. So we cover stories like those, and we actually cover more stories where young people end up losing their lives.
What?
You get others trying to revenge the death of your mom. So if you get someone being shot today, a few days later, then you get others now wanting to revenge the particular person's death.
No.
I remember back in 2020, hard lockdown, I covered this story when it was about 4 people who were actually killed. It was sad because one of the girls who was killed was actually a father of a child, only just a few months. And he was actually shot in front of his 10-year-old son.
What?
Right here in Westbury. So stories like those obviously need to go out there. We don't cover this story, but if it is something that is continuously happening, people are just being shot, people are losing their lives, and it is something that seems never to be stopping. So we cover stories like those, obviously, and young people who are addicted to substances. You do get good stories, or at least a good ending to some of the stories. Someone who was once addicted to substance they manage to change their lives. You know that I used to work for one of the centers here, the Westbury Center, and we have seen young people coming to the center. Some of them will have been addicted to substance, and then they come to Westbury Development Center or Youth Center at least, and basimola ba change matshelo a bona. And you actually become proud of the stories but unfortunately for some, they don't actually see light at the end of the tunnel, or maybe if they do see the light, unfortunately light just bringing a lot of disaster for one. So stories like those, cover the stories they are more about young people who feel like they don't have opportunities, they don't have a way of changing their lives. But then you get others from the very same communities who feel like, you know what, I am able to change my life. I just need to make sure that to relevant people, because there are so many good things that are happening in this community. And I always had an issue. The only time when you get these communities, I mean Westbury and other communities being covered by mainstream media, someone has been shot or something bad has happened. But we tend to forget in these very same communities, they are doing good things, but we don't actually focus on such people. They are making changes in our communities on a daily. The only time we work at Westbury is when maybe an alleged gangster has actually shot someone, or so a young person has actually, of course, pointed a gun at the teacher or something of that nature. So we don't focus on the positive things, and maybe the narrative that has always been sold about this community is that now Westbury keep like a dangerous, which is something that I knew when Westbury when I started working here. No, you are going into this dangerous environment. But I told you earlier on, I came into this community and I actually met the opposite. I actually met friendly people in Westbury. I met some good people in Westbury. They welcomed me to Northwest, and then having to come and work in this community. So we don't have more stories of that nature. As much as we are telling them at community radio level, because I try by all means to make sure that I tell stories. Whether it is bad stories about the community, we are going to tell those stories. We are not going to shy away from actually saying that, no, someone has been shot. But also, let's talk about someone who has graduated or someone who passes distinction stage 5 from Westbury Secondary School. So let's talk about that. Let's not only talk about the negative that is happening. So that's what I've really been covering, but also the struggle is about to, you get a family of 6 having to stay more flatting, then that is more Westbury. And then you go further down the road, or you go Kathara Park, then you have to actually see family, they stay in this legal shack by share as a family. And this is the life they choose, but the only life they know. And it is unfortunate because then you get politicians who are always making these empty promises. I call them empty promises because nothing is actually materializing from that. And people are still suffering at the end of the day. And remember, they need to come back to us now, leading up to the election. But no, let's talk to people. So it is bad because you know what they promised 5 years ago. And then 5 years later, when they come back and making the very same promise, you are a presenter, you are a broadcaster, and then you actually think about you somebody promising 5 years ago. So who's the biggest liar here? Is it me? Well, I need to keep you accountable for what you promised back then, or is it you who is continuously lying and also or you're not even feeling shameful? So yeah, we cover those stories like any other journalist, I suppose. Yeah.
Is it difficult to then say to a politician who's lying to you?
Yeah.
And then you can see what this guy is lying.
Yeah.
Do you then allow them to finish a point of a lie, or do you like interrupt and say, "Aye"?
No, I've never been one to keep quiet. So I'm sure that you have seen also some of the councillor candidates. But you promised this 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So maybe you will not say it. But deep inside, I win it. So but this is what you promised. Why you pretend you don't know what is happening down Riverlea, go Sen Street, while you are the very same person or campaigning in Sen Street, go Riverlea 5 years ago. So why are you pretending today as a ward councillor? You don't know how but was struggling with that area when it is season ya pool. So yeah, things like those we talk about them, we obviously question, and some people don't like being questioned.
Yeah.
They don't like being put on the spot, but it is our job to make sure that we keep people accountable, we hold them accountable. We don't just speak to them, but then the position, and then they end up sleeping the baitable.
So let's talk about this, the councillors. Pella,
Yeah.
since your journey, Moko Fifi, you've been exposed to your 2011 elections,
Yeah.
your 2014 elections, 2016 elections, 2021.
Yeah.
There's like 4 elections.
Absolutely.
Now, here's another thing. Kore, do you think because we've had 4 elections,
Yeah.
Kore, people are just tired? Kore, no, man. We've just come out of election.
Yeah.
2 years later,
Yeah.
there is a local or a national. Kore, it's not a frequency of 5 years. It's a frequency of 5 years for local government, the
Sure.
frequency. But how di bala wa di kopanya kaofela? You can see, or 2011, 2016, and then 2019, and then 2021.
Yeah.
4 elections.
Yeah. And as an ordinary community member, I need to know the difference between local and general elections, because enough for now it is all about the policy because the very same policy who are more the local government elections the very same promises that the local the general elections are. So yeah, people are. I always say that there's Afrikaans word, the famous Afrikaans word, if you like, the word hurtful.
Oh, yeah.
So people are hurtful,
Yeah.
and they will continuously tell you that no, it's hurtful. Or each and every time things are going to be okay. Whether it is this political party, but 2 years later, even if we vote the general elections, after voting for a different one, maybe the local government elections, typical example, 2016, 2021, we vote for a different one. But we don't really see or feel any difference as a voter. So people are fed up because but the promises, and then they take a step back. But the promise, and then when it comes to calling the meeting as the ward councillor, in that difficulty for one to call meetings. But even if they do call meetings, they are not singing a different tune. Yeah, or not. There's not much I can do. But remember, you are there as a representative. So we need to feel like we have a voice having a ward councillor, because then why do we have a ward councillor if we let them go the city of Johannesburg council, but you are not really or we feel like you are not really representing us. So lack of communication from the ward councillors are something that I've actually experienced over the years. I always say, leading up to the elections, you have my number as a ward councillor candidate, at least. You have my numbers. You are able to communicate. But after the elections, we have to run after you now as the media, as a community radio station. But you know that our station is always open for you. If you feel like you need to communicate and say, guys, I'm really trying by all means as a ward councillor, but some of the city of Johannesburg entities are not really coming to party. City Parks is not really coming to party. City Power or Joburg Water, they are not really coming to party. So it doesn't mean like I'm not doing anything as a ward councillor. I am doing a lot, just that not much is really coming through from those who are responsible. But if you were to say that as a ward councillor, just imagine how easy it was going to be for Rona as a radio station to say, guys, we have a ward councillor here in studio now, and this is a feedback that a ward councillor have pertaining to the issues that we are complaining about. But unfortunately, about communicating until we go after them. And so what does that say now?
Is it poor communications?
Yeah.
Because communications as a whole, it's a study.
Yes, yeah.
You go to school to communicate.
Absolutely, yeah.
So some of these people either banally a natural gift of being able to communicate, others they don't have. So you think it's a lack of communication from our leaders? Is it also a lack of accountability? In the sense, if Bafiloro they come to a platform like Kofif, they are going to be criticized and questioned, and therefore they don't feel like they want to account.
Yeah. I mean, I will say a bit of both. Because remember, Sipo, I speak to you as a candidate leading up to the elections. So you know, problem again more Westbury, but struggle again. Only the places they belong to the city. People have to stay there, and these flats are just like when it comes to the rainy season, people can stay in their flats like Basa Sokole, Mabota Koloba. You know about these issues. You are from the community, and you are able to talk freely about them leading up to the election. Like you are very vocal.
Yeah.
As a ward councillor candidate, criticizing the former or someone who actually is a ward councillor in the area.
Yeah.
So now, what changes after Hotlopi as a ward councillor now? What changes? Why are you unable to communicate? Why are you unable to answer questions after the elections? So I would say that it does also now amount to you not wanting to be accountable, including also not wanting to communicate. Not that you don't know how to communicate, because we know or why it's so communicated, because you communicated before the elections. But then after the elections, because now you are on the hot seat, you don't want to communicate because you don't want to be criticized. So I would say a bit of both. Yeah.
So which politician was the hardest one for you to crack? Because after that interview, you're like, yeah. I don't know if I want to speak to politicians anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if I should actually drop names now.
Please drop names, or at least drop hints.
Yeah. Well, I will actually say this other politician, a political party at least, so it's not one of the well-known political parties.
Okay.
When I interview leading up to the elections, and it was difficult to get anything out of them. Like yes, no. Yeah. So it was quite difficult to have this person selling their political party. You are trying by all means, because as a journalist, you'll be taught, when you have a panel discussion, say maybe leading up to the elections, you have a panel discussion with the different political parties. If you feel like political party C is not really, or their representative is not really coming forth compared to political party A and B, then try by all means to push them a little bit, or to make sure that you give them a fair chance. So in a difficulty when the person is just answering yes or no. So I will say that, but also though there was one political party also, I won't mention the councillor's name, but I know that she knows. We are okay now. We had a cup of tea and we end out our issues. So back in 2012, I had to cover the centenary celebration of the ANC in Sophia Town, where former President Jacob Zuma came through to Sophia Town. It's a big day. It was a big day, obviously. And as a community journalist, a community-based journalist, you want to cover a story of that caliber.
Yeah.
And then that ward councillor from that political party, I won't mention, had decided to organize an event.
I know who she is, right?
Yeah, now of course you do. So she decided to organize a smaller event on the day to go and address an event. And because I and a colleague of mine from another media house decided to go to this event, it only made sense, right? Then she complained about me. She came to the station to complain about me. And also went to that newspaper, that publication company, to complain about my colleague, to say, no, these two are the mouthpieces of the ANC. So I've been accused of that, of being the mouthpiece of the ANC. I've been accused of being the mouthpiece of the DA, by the way. And just recently, I was also told that, this one, it was actually said on Facebook, that, this one, Ukriya a brown envelope from the Patriotic Alliance.
What?
Yeah. And I was actually joking. Why didn't they say a green envelope? Because we know Patriotic Alliance, obviously the green color.
Yeah.
So I've been accused many a times. And with that ward councillor also, it was something that was actually new for me in the industry, to be criticized. But later on, as I mentioned, we ended our issues. We are okay now. We had a cup of tea, and then no councillor, but Molo, you were offering me, because you must know that now I'm not here to be. I'm not a PR personnel, a ward councillor or any other politician for that matter. I'm here to serve the community, and if I feel like this is newsworthy, I'm going to cover that story, whether it is from political party A, C, B, or whichever political party. I'm here to inform the people. So I'm not here representing any political party. So it is a struggle not only for us, the community radio sector, but elsewhere. You'll always get Batwell, they want to take advantage of your kindness. But no, you're just doing your job.
There was a report that came out where some journalists were actually on a payroll.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just trying to think of those journalists. There was a list of them where they were either in Jacob Zuma's camp or others. So just from an independence of media, being a media person yourself, do you think the media is independent? If you look at how they cover stories, because 1 minute baka cover a specific political party in a positive light. The other ones, they are, you know, and then even how you look at how they covered Jacob Zuma,
Yes.
how they, even with the current president Cyril Ramaphosa, you don't read the kind of criticism like the same way Zuma used to face.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, let me be honest with you. I mean, Remo Media and Aloena, we have been in this industry for long.
Yeah.
So I will be totally honest with you, Kiano. There's a lot that we need to do to change about ourselves. No, independence, it does actually leave a lot to be desired. The independence in the media, a lot to be desired. Not only when it comes to covering the politicians, but just covering the issues in general. When you have to cover the issues, disamational state capture or corruption for that matter, we always talk about corruption when it has to do with a certain caliber Yabatu, but other people, like we sort of actually come up with some nice terms while actually the corruption. So we are not actually strong, vocal enough to talk about those issues. And then we know Sipo, which is something bad because we are there to inform. We need to be to make sure that we inform people and we the issues. And also, if we report on a story, we should not actually look on President Ramaphosa, President Zuma. Let's talk about issues as they are. And a lot has to be done, Sipo. When it comes to the independence of media, some journalists, as you mentioned, some of them have been confirmed to have been paid. So by corrupt, and then what do they do to the industry now? People have lost trust with the media industry, and that credibility, boy, we need to do a lot in making sure that we report that story. You spoke about President Ramaphosa. We know that others feel like no, President Ramaphosa is the darling of the media. No, actually, we criticize the president. And when you talk about these issues, ANC, no, you are too harsh on the ANC. When you talk about the DA, no, but we know the DA is the darling of the media. So, like, there's a lot that we need to do in making sure that so that when they listen to the news, just speaking about the news bulletin, then they know how no. When they listen to the report, the elective conference of the ANC, they don't feel like no media is on the side yabale RET, and then this media house let's just report on issues and as they are. I mean, a lot of damage has been done, but there's no way that we can actually, I'm talking about these people now, generally, we cannot wish away media. I talk media, and if we see that things are not actually how they used to be before, let's make sure that they fix some more. But yeah, independence-wise, as media guys, there's a lot that we need to do. We need to make sure that we
still a long way.
A long way, but we have to work towards that. We have to make sure that I change a little know, and otherwise, people are going to end up believing whatever they see on the social media, and not only believe what they see on the newspaper and also what they hear on radio.
Absolutely, man. My brother, it's been so amazing to chat to you and share views with you. Just any closing comments on your side? I mean, I'm sure there are people that are watching that want to get into the media industry. There's some young people who are inspired by your story that like to get in. So just encourage a fella.
So let me maybe speak specifically to those they want to get into a community radio sector. So I've been here from 2012 with the community radio sector. I worked for Kofifi, and then I resigned, I think, twice for Kofifi. So I resigned 2017. I remember it was around the month of October, the last day of October, just after interviewing the current speaker, Vasco da Gama.
Yeah.
And then I decided, you know what, I'm hanging up my microphone, Katsamai.
Yeah.
And then I came back in December, the very same year, I resigned. 2018, Katsamaya, I worked for Ratlu FM, and then I came back to Kofifi FM. And so, but in a nutshell, I've been in the industry for that long, like 2012 until now. It has not been easy. So if maybe Motabula no easy. We just don't come here and talk because we just come on radio.
Yeah.
We just don't come here and talk. Otherwise, to just come and talk. So there's a lot of work that we do behind the scenes. There's a lot of preparation that we do more radio because I've listened to radio over the years personally. As I mentioned, it was my source of information. So I don't want a person coming onto radio about there's a friend of mine who's also in the industry batho ba kgotlana mowa Mr. Lizos Mokwati but there are air pollution, so batho ba tsena mo moyeng, lack of preparation, and then they end up actually polluting the airwaves, and that is also now tainting our industry, tainting this important industry media radio. So I will say that if you want to get in the industry, don't expect to get rich because industry. Let me be honest with you, more especially if you go a community radio station, it is a struggle. And but if you know that this is something that you want to do, you are definitely going to stay the course and make sure that how it's in molo and the mentality of being a celebrity, because we are not celebrities. Once again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier on. As community radio presenters, community radio broadcasters, whether you're a journalist, you are a technician, or whatever you do, we are not different from someone all in busy Noyana cleaning up the streets. We are not different from someone all in busy Noyana trying to help a child from Newclaire, from Westbury, to get into a rehab as a community activist. We are not different. Perhaps the only privilege alone, microphone, the only privilege alone as journalist, get that piece of paper on a pen, and then have thousands and thousands of people reading your story, listening to your story. So we are not different. The only difference is we are more, at least, empowered to be able to tell stories and also have people listening to what we have to say. So that will be my parting shot. Just stay there, because if you know that this is something that you want to do, but mentality of a celebrity, that's what we are.
So humility,
Absolutely.
hard work, focus, patience, because
your patience,
your breakthrough, it's like you have to be thick-skinned.
I'm telling you, my brother, I'm telling you. And so you must, like, each and every day, you go a thick skin each and every day. Because you are challenged, whether get a colleague, whether get back to you just meet down the streets, what are you doing there? You are going to meet such people. I'll criticize for no reason, and then guess what? If you stay there, because the very same person will come back a year from now, or now criticize, or maybe 2 years from now. You know what? I'm actually proud of how you have actually managed to stay the course and what you have become. So stay the course, be patient, as you mentioned, and you've got this.
Nice one.
Sure.
And thank you so much for taking time. Next time we'll have gifts of some sort, so that all our guests, they walk away with something. But at least we walked away with a lunch now, but we'll have to find something along the way. See, we have to be creative.
This is enough for me.
Because
I mentioned earlier that radio, and alongside you, Pauline Moral, you wanted to speak about how I got into talk radio. You introduced me to talk radio.
Oh yes.
Because it was the first time ever for getting into studio, host a talk show, having to interview the likes of both Dr. Mampela Rampele, Bontate, the leader now of the ACDP, Kenneth Meshwe, the likes of Mosimaneotsile, that many others, like Batubelo,
the actresses.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So it was for me, and also one of the things that happened, I interviewed Brian Letsoho.
Yes.
As someone who was actually or had always been in the industry, listening to his story, it also served as an inspiration for me. So talk radio for now. You introduced me to that Aritoma back in 2014, and here I am. Today I'm able to actually have the MEC, the former MEC, health, coming into studio, give me interview across different community radio stations from Gauteng.
What?
So I mean, that for me, Bandila Masuk.
Yes.
So I mean, that for me was also something was different. And when did it start? It was mainly by me learning from the likes of you. Kidulamu studio, not knowing this is how you actually start you can start the conversation, yes, but how do you actually keep a personal conversation and make sure that interview is going to be interesting, but also leave someone informed at the end of that conversation. So I've learned a lot over the years. And I mean, for the whole day.
We can speak the whole day, man, the whole day. I'd like to invite you again so that the conferences that are coming up. There's an ANC conference coming up, Joburg region, over this weekend. They might, I heard already it might be postponed.
Yes.
All the other regions, let's honor, they're expected to sit before the end of the month. Then there's a conference here, province here, ANC.
Yes.
Then it's the national conference. So it's a
notice
silly
going to have-
season.
Yeah, no, it is a silly season.
Yeah.
A silly season.
And you're going to be covering most of them.
I'll be out and about.
Okay.
Recover, yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. So I'm looking forward to the next conversation.
Yeah.
And thank you so much to the free riders.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much. Well, this has been an amazing episode, man. Once again, big ups and thank you to Mr. President Classic Cars for sponsoring us with a car to be able to drive around with my boy. And big ups to everybody who's involved in this podcast, Seed on video and visuals and editing, and as well as main guy on graphics. Big ups and thank you very much. We're signing out. Lekao sign. Voila.
Hello, Mo. Sherry.
Oh, yeah.